Hello, everybody, and welcome. We are so glad you are here. Welcome, everybody. Awesome. Let me go ahead and spotlight some people. Wow. Welcome, everybody. So glad you are here for the Writer's Bridge today. Welcome for our June Writer's Bridge. And so glad to have you here today. We have a very exciting bridge planned for you today. So what do you do when a book you believe in didn't find its readers the first time around? What if you are writing a genre that's not selling right now? Today, we are going to talk to a New York Times best-selling author about the long arc of a writing career, what it takes to keep your backlist alive and findable, how to recognize when publishing trends are moving in your favor, and what you can do right now to make sure your best work gets the second chance it deserves. But first, hey, Charla, what's coming up with Craft Talks webinars?
Hi, welcome everyone. Happy Tuesday. Tomorrow is the last day to join our season pass, which is like the best deal that we offer. It's all of our webinars through the end of December and 6 office hours with the dynamic Allison, which is of course by itself worth the price. And then we also have our first webinar of the season pass, but it's free for anyone to enroll. That is tomorrow with Bethany Jarmol on the secrets to writing gorgeous lyrical writing that makes editors and readers say, wow. I'll post both of those links in the chat. Allison, what's coming up for you?
And before I do my little plug there, I just want to say to you, I think Bethany's webinar is especially good. We just got an email response in yesterday. Whenever you guys get the Welcome to Craft Talks email, we always say, what are you struggling with right now? And somebody wrote they're working on elevating their writing to a literary level. They want to be more conscious of their voice. They want to be more conscious of their style. And Bethany's webinar is definitely the kind of thing you want to be doing if that is your focus, if you are focusing on elevating your voice.
And also, if
What
you're
I have
curious about
coming up,
poetry as well, like
oh,
people that are
yes.
curious about poetry, it's a really great bridge between poetry and
Absolutely,
prose.
absolutely. And what I have coming up is I will be co-teaching with Dinty W. Moore a virtual intensive called Midsummer Memoir. So if you are a memoirist, let's energize our writing for the summer. That's going to be July 10th, 11th, and 12th at rebirthyourwriting.com. And you can use the coupon BRIDGE for $50 off. I will pop that link right into the chat. And I'll also be in France the first week of August. So if you are interested in writing in France, get in touch and I will hook you up with all of the details about that. We are just so glad you are here. It is so fantastic to be with our wonderful community. Go ahead and write into the chat. Where are you coming from today? What are you currently working on? We always love to know. We have a fabulous guest today. Charlotte, start us off.
So we all know a book that came out quietly, got lost in the noise, or simply arrived before its moment. And every author wonders, is it gone for good or can I bring it back? And just so you all know, I have construction right outside my window. So speaking of noise, I apologize if it's interrupting.
Can't hear a thing. You are so
Okay,
good.
good. So I'd like to introduce Christopher. Christopher Buehlman is the New York Times bestselling author of Between Two Fires, The Black-Tongued Thief, The Daughter's War, The Lesser Dead, The Necromancer's House, The Suicide Motor Club, and Those Across the River. Writing at the intersection of horror and fantasy with wit, grit, and genuine literary ambition, he has built a devoted readership across more than a decade of publishing. He escaped Florida via sarcasm and dark fiction and has never looked back. Welcome, Christopher. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Charlotte and Allison. Great to be here with you guys.
So good to have you. So, Christopher, your book, Between Two Fires, described by critics and also by me as a harrowing visionary journey through plague-ravaged medieval France, was published to critical acclaim and then kind of waited for the world to catch up. What happened when it came out the first time around?
Well, I had just finished writing Those Across the River. That was my first novel. It had not been published yet because there's a fair amount of lead time. And my very astute editor, Tom Colgan, asked me what I'd like to write next. And you know, I never really thought about trends or what was going to be what's popular now, what's likely to be popular in 3 years. You know, that's not why I'm in it. I just wanted to write what I wanted to write. And I wanted to have a good time in the writing process. And I had a good time writing those across the river because I'm a history nerd. So I spent a good, you know, I spent a long, long time researching the period because it's set in 1935 in the American South in Georgia. And it follows a character who is a World War I veteran. So I wanted to make sure I had everything lined up with that side of his past. It's a first person narrative, so the details were going to have he was going to have a casual authority when he spoke, right? Um, so anyway, I just loved it. I loved disappearing and down into period like that. So I wanted to do another period novel. And I thought, okay, I'm interested in the Middle Ages, but I don't know it in such a granular way as I do, say, the Elizabethan Renaissance, from all the time I spent doing Ren fairs and doing a one-man show about Christopher Marlowe and all that. So I thought, all right, Middle Ages, what happened in the Middle Ages? And it was, oh, okay. I've always been fascinated by books about plague, particularly Stephen King's The Stand. So I thought, instead of writing a book about what would happen if the plague happened today, I said, well, what would happen if I wrote a book about what would happen if the plague happened when the plague happened? So
And this,
here it
you were
was.
writing Between Two Fires in like 2010, 2009.
I
So
started,
suggestion does it work?
yeah, I started on it in 2010, just after I signed the deal with Penguin to publish Those Across the River in 2011. So here I was, had a deal, book coming out in a year, got to start on the next book. Um, my editor warned me. He said, I think that a novel about 14th century France is going to potentially feel obscure to an American audience. You know, what if it was ninth century Bohemia, you know? And I said, well, I think I can make it look familiar. I think I can make 14th century France was the powerhouse of Europe. It had the most people, it had the most money, it had some of the most banging architecture, art, culture, everything. So it arguably was the sort of America of its time until it got got a big dose of first famine and then war and then plague, the horsemen that we know so well.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, so he was concerned about it, how it would do in the marketplace. And he was not wrong, as it turned out, because that book got published and it just, the title is right for the book once you've read it, but it's not evocative of what's going to happen, really. And and these are, and this is the marketing type of stuff that I think is valuable.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The title should say something about it. Not, and again, not that I would change it now, but um, the title is important. And the cover is important. The cover that they put on it the first time was attractive. And I gave them some notes to hopefully make it more clear what was going on with it, but you wouldn't know what it was about. When I finally republished it, I addressed all of that. The new image, the red cover, has a piece of artwork inspired by an old like brass rubbing
Mhm.
of a 14th century knight, but his face has been replaced by a skeleton's face. And it says, and I had it say, an epic novel of medieval horror right under
Mm.
the thing. So this is what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that stuff is important.
And it's popular right now too. I'm thinking of Gideon as well as a series that is really popular.
Mm.
But let's step back a little bit.
Yeah.
So when it came out in 2012, right, it had a lot of good reviews, but then it went relatively quiet for over a decade. But now it's a New York Times bestseller and a BookTok sensation. Can you walk us through those years in between? What was your relationship with the book while it was sitting there and not finding its audience?
Yeah. It was hard to take because I really loved this book and I really believed in it and I researched the fire out of it. I researched it so thoroughly, but I think I think I did a good job. And this is always the challenge with this kind of thing. Whether you're world building a fantasy novel or whether you're researching a historical novel, you don't want to do info dumps or lore dumps, if you will. So you know, I always try to leave the tools or the information the reader needs in their path as the story progresses, rather than hitting them with a lot at the beginning or in any one particular chapter. Um, so anyway, I was proud of the book. Didn't do well. I moved on. But my horror career never really recovered. The subsequent books didn't sell very well because when your sophomore effort is financially not doing it, bookstores don't want your next book because when they're shopping for authors, they see numbers. And what numbers did your last book sell? So when your last book didn't sell very much, they don't want your third book. When your third
Heartless.
book, yeah, yeah. So I don't know what the print run of Between Two Fires was, but I know that the initial print run for those across the river was 50,000. And Penguin was happy with the way that book sold. They said it was like it was a base hit. They said
Mhm.
it has outperformed their expectations for a first novel.
Nice.
Um, so good. It did good. It wasn't a smash, but it was good. Um, but again, 50,000 is I think the number they first printed. Uh, but by the time we got to the Necromancer's House, based on sales and stuff, the print run was 9,000 for my third book. So there was a huge drop off. And I think I don't think it's uncharitable to call what happened next to Death Spiral, because I just wasn't. I was slowly building a little niche audience because people liked the books when they got a hold of them, but nobody was picking them up.
Mm.
Um, no, nobody really was. And when the Necromancer's House I didn't do myself any favors with that book because that was a very experimental book. It didn't have a clear hook. It's about a middle-aged modern day wizard who's in recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous, and he's sitting on a big stash of magic that he stole from Baba Yaga when he was in the Soviet Union back.
Nothing says smash contemporary hit like a Baba Yaga alcoholism book.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
I mean, I think it sounds great.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of it. But anyway, so yeah, it didn't do well. And when they and a lot of writers would have been dropped at this point.
Right.
They Penguin was very clear that they liked my writing, and they just said we know you're going to break out. It's not if, it's when. We might not always be able to give you the advances that you would like, or that we would like to give you,
Mhm.
until you do break out. But we'll keep signing you up as long as you want to keep writing with us, and I hope you do. That's what Tom said, and I had a good relationship with him. But oh, oh, of mice and men. Uh, this was not too long before Penguin's acquisition by Random House,
Mm.
and they cleaned house. They cleaned house, and the president of my division, Berkeley, was part of that restructuring.
Mm.
And so they published two vampire novels, The Lesser Dead and The Suicide Murder Club, with me. And then when I pitched a sixth book, they didn't take it. And so I now was a man without a publisher. And my agent said, "Well, I think it's time we rebrand you. What do you like to write besides horror? Or what do you like to read besides horror?" And I was like, "Fantasy."
Yeah.
And she said, "Do you want to write a fantasy novel?" I said, "Yeah, I kind of do." So that's how The Black Tongue Thief came about. And this is the timing and everything is important. Um, so I started working on that 2016, 2017. By 2019, I had a good draft, and we sent it off to Lindsay Hall at Tor, and she bought it. And Tor is very different, very, very different animal from Penguin or Penguin Random House.
Hmm.
They are nimble. They are a house of delightful, exotic, beautiful nerds.
Hmm.
And
And a quick side note for our listeners who may not be familiar with Tor, Tor has always been a fantasy publisher. They are amazing at fantasy. They are known for fantasy. We have said on this show before that, oh, publishers aren't brands, authors are brands. Tor is a brand.
yes,
People who are into fantasy, they will specifically look for books by Tor. As Jan posts in the chat, science fiction and fantasy equals Tor. Back to
yeah,
you, Chris.
yeah, and that was a great note. That was a great note to add. That is all very true. So I was in remarkably good hands at this point. I was with the right publisher for what I was doing. And they began to beat the rushes, telling people about this book that was coming out in 2021. They were 2 years out, 2 years lead time. And they used that time really, really well. They lined up a bunch of readers to blurb it. They talked about it. And they made a lot of curiosity. People were like, well, that book sounds good. Who is this Buehlman guy? What else has he written? Now, let's step back, take a step back. I had in 2019, I was still working the Renaissance Festival circuit as my main job because I sure wasn't paying the bills with horror novels. So I did comedy acts on the festival circuit, and many of my fellow performers sell merchandise. Almost all of them do, of one kind or another. Back in the day, the best merchandise you could have was a CD or a DVD of your act because those are easy to transport.
Oh God,
And
so much easier than t-shirts. When I
yeah,
was performing on the Renaissance Festival circuit, we had like two giant cardboard boxes of t-shirts. It was a real pain in the ass.
yeah, I never wanted to get into any of that. Um, but you know what most performers don't have is a book. So, and particularly a book that is medieval. So it's not really incongruous with the Renaissance Festival. So I went to Penguin Random House. I went back to Tom and I said, I had my agent write him. And luckily there was a clause in there for reversion of rights if not enough are being sold. And well, not enough were being sold by quite a big margin. So I got the rights back.
Wow.
Now I I am not a marketing genius. Allison is. I am not. And I wanted those books just to cart them around the country and sell them to people at Ren fairs. I did not know that Tor was going to get people curious about me. I did not know that meanwhile on Reddit, slowly, brick by brick, there was a little readership being built, particularly because of a few evangelists for my work.
Mm.
Somebody came to me and said, you're big on Reddit at one point, like around 2019, 2020. And I was like, what's a Reddit? I didn't know. Um, and I did not know we were heading into a pandemic.
Uh-huh.
And I had written a plague book.
Hmm.
So these three things aligned. And my book was being sold through Kindle Direct Publishing through Amazon. And the thing about getting the rights back to a book is the thing about like self-publishing versus publisher publishing. I'm
So
sure
when you got the rights back, you then republished it yourself before
correct.
you bought it. Okay, and so Chris, let me just also ask, are you the one who designed the new cover then?
Uh, I told no, there's a designer fellow named Jared. He is my agent's husband, and he did an amazing job. An amazing job with it. I said I want like a brass rubbing. I said I showed some examples of it. Yep, there it is. There
This
it
is
is.
our cover. Yep, which is
Yep.
beautiful, which is really
Yep.
beautiful. And I want to show you the previous cover, which it's not a
Mm.
bad cover. It's an
Looks
elegant
historical
cover,
fiction.
but
Yeah.
it looks like historical fiction. It does
Yeah.
not look like horror. It looks like somebody's going to tell me something really smart about the plague
Yeah.
years.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
learn,
Yep.
I'm gonna learn a lot of dates.
And instead, we've got this one right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks even hints to the time period and everything. That's great.
So then you self-published it from there. Did you have to pay for the rights? We have a great question from Rebecca in the chat. Did you have to pay for the rights, or did they just give them back to you because they weren't selling enough?
That no, as per the contract, they just simply had to give them back. And I really don't know if like they could have maybe said, okay, but we will make a reedition or whatever. I don't know if they could have, but I know that they didn't, and they didn't. It just wasn't
They
something they were
probably figured
interested.
it was going to cost them more money to
Yeah,
print more copies than to just give you back the book. And
yeah,
this, folks, is why we want literary agents. And I know there are frequently times when people say, oh, why do you need an agent? All they're going to do is charge you 15%, and you could go to a lawyer with your contract. Agents are the people who get you things like reversion of rights written into your contract.
great point. That is a great point. Yeah, my agent Michelle Brower is amazing, amazing, and she has done so much for me throughout my career.
So
Could
her husband designed the new cover for you.
Yep,
And because we are always really upfront about money here on the Writer's Bridge, did you pay him for it or was it a favor?
it was a favor.
That's awesome. And
Yep.
this is why we want to do so many favors for the other people around us, so that even if it's not a direct exchange, what goes around comes around. Pay it
The
forward
wheel.
as much as you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so now we're moving forward in time. Um, Lindsay Hall at Tor spoke with me more than one, spoke with me about Between Two Fires, because Tor now had Nightfire, so they've got a horror imprint,
And
and
horror is also now surging into popularity again. All of a sudden, people want horror books.
yeah. So she asked, would you ever be interested in having a conversation about moving the rights over to Tor? And I was like, well, I had so the book began to sell, and it began to really sell. And to explain sort of the difference, when a publisher had the book, if it sold, I maybe make, I don't know, 90 cents, a buck and a quarter, something like that. Every time this book sold, I made like almost $6 each book. So when it starts moving thousands of books, that becomes a life-changing event. Um, so when they asked about the rights, I was reluctant to tamper with this magical fire hose of money that had just opened up and started blasting through my window. Um, and Lindsay completely understood. But a little bit later, we talked again, and I talked with my agent. And we had a little talk about the pros and cons, and they pointed out that this moment may not last forever. Um, they said that, and eventually I decided, based on a couple of things. One, um, they took the numbers, and my agent had an honest discussion and showed them all the numbers to see showed them what I was making. So that when they made an offer, it would be a realistic one, and it was a great offer, and it also included an advance on another medieval horror novel that I'm going to start writing soon. Um, but there's so much came with it with Tor. They are so good. They planned this beautiful reedition using the same cover design, and this time the artist got paid. Um, and they just went out there and made such a big, and they did a smart thing. It was a little mean, but it was smart. They created a drought. They had me take the book off Amazon. And so this book was simply not available for 6 months, something like that. And in all this time, it was still racking up all kinds of reviews and book talks and everything else, but you couldn't find it except on eBay for but just a pile of money. So people wanted it. And when they announced it was coming out and they showed that edition with those beautiful black sprayed edges, people pre-ordered. People pre-ordered. So I do not think I would be a New York Times bestseller had I not sold to Tor and let them work their magic.
Right.
Um, and get the book
So
everywhere.
that's something that a lot of self-published authors discuss. I know that in beginning writers groups on Facebook, I very often see people who say, "Well, why would you ever work with a publisher? You can make so much more money if you self-publish." And you did make good money when you self-published. And yet at the same time, you're saying that there is a marketing strategy. There is the printing of extra special fancy books, which are right now a big trend as well, extra special fancy physical books. And so it was worth it to you, but you're also saying that your agent showed them the numbers and was like, dude, what are you going to do to make it worth his while?
Yeah.
Yeah,
How can we make it worth everybody's while? How can it be a
yeah,
bonanza for the publisher and a bonanza for Chris? And this is also something that's looking forward in your career because they are willing to support your next book as well.
yes, yes. And they know how to time books getting released, you know? They know
Yeah.
how to keep my name on people's lips.
Mm.
So, yeah, just hats off all around. It was just the right thing. It was the right thing.
When this was
So
happening, what was that like? Were you like, when did you know that like book talk and all that was is starting to garner interest and like your sales were kind of going out of through the roof? Like, is this something that you were like, how do I actively tend this, or is this something that you're just like sitting back and watching happen? Well, like, what was that in your world?
Man, I'm not good with business. I am not good with money. None of that. So I was really kind of a bystander. I was a passenger for much of this process. I had important decisions to make,
Mm,
but I had good counsel while making this decision. So I am so fully in the on the creative side of things that
right.
yeah,
So you
I
didn't do
let
any promotions for the self-published book. You were
I
just
would I
carting
would
around.
I would occasionally go and do a sale out of my house. I would do a
Hmm.
flash sale and sell signed books and make some good money from that. But as far as promotions or ads or any of that kind of thing, nothing.
but I also want to mention too, Chris, that when we say, oh, Chris works for the Renaissance Festival, we tend to assume that, like, oh, he has some charming little thing involving leg bells or, something like that. And in fact, you were a big ass mofo hit at the Renaissance Festival. You regularly played to several thousand people a day, all of whom got to know you as a person and like your sense of humor and see you holding up a copy of the book and going, oh, that funny guy. He has also written something that I might also like because I like this funny guy who I have just spent 45 minutes with laughing my ass off.
Yeah, no,
So,
but
so don't underestimate your own power of sales there.
yeah, you know what? You're right. I was doing promotion, but I wasn't doing it on the internet, and I wasn't
Exactly.
doing it in traditional ways.
And this was not social media, and this was not learning how to run Amazon ads, and this was not learning how to run Facebook ads or learning how to run Google ads.
Nope.
This was making friends with people who are interested in what you have to share and offering to them, hey, here is something I have that fits in with the stuff you already like from me.
Right.
Right. Right. And I'm a very analog human. I do things, in a really old school way. Like like when the pandemic happened, I tried to do internet things with my fan base, and I did a few things and they liked them. But performing for this doesn't do anything for me. What does something for me is being in front of a live audience and listening to people and interacting with them and seeing them. And I'm still very much like that. Oh my God, I love doing book tours. And when I do a book tour, they'll say, okay, here's what's gonna happen. We're gonna introduce you and then this stuff. So no, don't introduce me. I want to do a cold open. And then I'll
Mm,
go out there and just belt out this opening stuff. And especially with Between Two Fires, because it's got that biblical language in the beginning. It really, really grabs a room.
mm.
And I think this is where you being an entertainer to begin with is really helpful because I was actually just talking to Nancy Hauswald, who owns Left Bank Books in Maine,
Hmm.
and she was decrying another bookstore owner where she went to the talk, and the bookstore owner was just atrocious at introducing the person. There was just, she's like, no, 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 there needs to be a much better introduction than that. And it sounds like it's really valuable to learn to present yourself.
Yes, yes. And I think we all know what Dunning-Kruger is, but I think it can work in reverse too. I don't know if that's I never actually read his work. I just sort of know the term and what it means. It means like not being smart enough to know how not smart you are. But I think it is possible to be good enough at something and for it to feel so natural that you don't realize that other people can't do it in the same way. Um, because I never fully appreciated what a different and challenging skill set public speaking is because I've just been doing it my whole life. Um, so I won one brick in my career climb was winning the 2007 Bridport Prize for Poetry for Best Single Poem. And this is a major, major contest out of England, out of the lovely coastal town of Bridport. And it offered a generous purse. It was a £5,000 prize for one poem, and I won it. And I went over there and I just noticed that a lot of the people who had won the top three slots of each category were to read their poem or read an excerpt from their work. And I just saw how nervous and shy these brilliant, brilliant folks, many of them were. And then when I went up and read, I felt myself grabbing the room and I felt them liking it. And it's a funny poem, Wanton, it's called, and they laughed, and it was a good time. But I'm very, very fortunate to have that background and that skill set.
And I will say that is something that we can also acquire. Chris is a natural performer. I've known him pretty much my whole life at this point. I mean, I've known you longer than I have not known you in my life. And Henry asks in the chat too, it's okay to be shy. And yet,
Yeah.
and I'm a natural performer, y'all may have noticed, but at the same time, this is something you can learn. You can take an acting class, you can get individual coaching on public speaking. I'm working with an author right now who is a wonderful best-selling author. She teaches, she presents, but she wants to be better at what she's doing. And so we're working on what's the vocal warm up that you can do in 15 minutes in the bookstore closet and sound better when you step out front. How can you establish yourself on the stage? How can you have in your head the key things you want to get out in an interview? And Audrey mentions in the chat too, she took a 5-hour singing class for actors and it helped her read her poetry out loud.
I saw that. Good on you, Audrey. That's the way to do it. Coincidentally, I am about to record the audiobook from for and that's another thing I've been lucky enough to do. I've been the voice talent on my last few audiobooks, starting with The Lesser Dead and pretty much all of them after that, except The Daughter's War, which is told from a female POV, and is brilliantly narrated by Nikki Garcia, who is the voice of Google Maps in Spain. So if you're in the mood,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, she was a
And
real,
so this is why sometimes you do not want to be your own narrator because sometimes you get something amazing like that. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
yeah, yeah. Um, but I'm going to be going to New York City to record The Thrice Bound Fool in August. And I am so looking forward to doing that. But I am revisiting the character of Kinshashannock, who I read with an Irish brogue for The Black Tongue Thief, and I thought I did a decent job. I've done Irish dialect before, But Goodreads being Goodreads, you sometimes read some reviews and you go, "Oh, Jesus." And sometimes mostly the reviews are coming from what I suspect were fellow Americans and maybe fellow Americans who weren't familiar with the idea that there's a Dublin dialect and there are also there's a Cork dialect and there's a um, um, oh my God, I just blanked. I'm so sorry. I've been hot and tired. But anyway,
You're
West
suffering
West
through a heat wave.
West Ireland. And so I thought, okay, I want to brush up this thing. So I've actually hired an Irish woman, an Irish dialect coach, and I've got an appointment with her tomorrow, and I'm going to work with her for probably 4 or 5 hours total before I do the recording, just to make sure I get it and do it right.
Wow. Allison, can I jump into a question from the chat?
Please do.
All
Please
right.
do.
Robin asked, can you say more about your book talks? How do you memorize? Do you memorize your excerpts, or do you bring your book up there with you?
Oh, I bring the book up with me. Yeah.
Great.
And so here's a thing then. For authors whose book has come out and not done super well, what's the difference between a book that is genuinely dead and a book that just hasn't found its moment yet? Is there a way to tell which one you have?
It's a very good question. Before we proceed, because this was going to bother me, Connemara. Connemara was the dialect that I worked on. Um, I I don't know. I honestly don't know. I never felt like any of my books were dead. Um, and I'm sure other writers have felt that way, and their books were fucking dead. But I believed in all of them, and I had a strong feeling they were going to find an audience one day. It was a very strong feeling. So I really can't speak to that. And also, you know, I was lucky enough that this discovery happened only a decade later. Um, I might have been the dead one before this happened. So there's that.
Yeah, there's a book right now, Those Who Have Never Known Men, that first came out in the 1910s, and it is suddenly very, very popular again right now. It's dystopian, long before like dystopian was a trend, and the author is not alive to see it anymore, but it's doing really well.
Is that
Well, how's
because
their
of
how's their book tour doing?
is that because of Book Talk, Allison, that it took off? Do you know?
Yeah, so I think so. I think it came. I think it was Book Talk that started talking about the book. It's about a group of women locked in a weird underground cell, and one of them escapes, and you don't really ever know why they're there or what they're doing. It's a maddening little book.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's
Um,
fascinating.
question from David. Did your agent earn anything from your self-published sales?
I don't believe so because my contract with the agent is for sale for contracts that they have negotiated.
That's what I
Mm.
would think. That's what I
Yeah.
think. Yeah. We have two questions from Cindy. Cindy writes romance and romantic suspense, and she's in Dallas. She has recently received the rights to two of her books. What should she do with them? And were you ever able to get your self-published version into bookstores, or was that not your focus?
That was not my focus. I know that some people went out and looked, some bookstore owners went out and looked for my books because they had already. First of all, let me just say that I can't fully address your question. I guess I'm not the right person to ask about that. I wish you great luck with it. Um, but I spent a long time being the best horror author you've never heard of. I'd say a good 7 years. I heard that a lot. So yeah.
They said the same thing about Arrested Development, not about the horror, but it's just like the best show that nobody watches.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
And now it's a cult classic,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
Um, for sure.
They say that publishing trends move in cycles. Like horror is very hot again right now, thankfully. Romantasy is everywhere. Memoir writers spend most of our time hearing, oh, memoir isn't selling, which seems to be kind of a perennial thing. Do you have any advice for authors whose books are at the wrong moment in a trend cycle? Should they do anything active? Is it just waiting? Is it just write the best book you can that you feel like writing?
Again, I'm going from my own experience, and I've had my own sort of punishment and reward cycle to condition this response. But I've finally done very well by writing the book that I believed in. And okay, so uh, here's the history nerd again. It always fascinates me, like when I go back and I read like the Master and Commander series of books, and thinking about like 18th century naval warfare, and you've got a boat here and you've got a cannon and you're pitching on the waves and the other boat is too, and you're trying to fire that cannonball with the timing just right so it hits that other ship when the waves and the stuff and the whatever. um you can't guess what's going to be in vogue by the time you finish that book, and by the time you have found your agent and they have found your editor and you have got a publisher. That's years. So put the crystal ball away, and just write the book you believe in, that you feel moved to write.
Mm. Yeah, I love that metaphor that you're using or analogies because these are forces entirely out of your control,
Yeah,
right? This is
yeah.
the rising and the falling of waves. Yeah. So you're publishing a sequel to The Black Tongue Thief in October 2026. How do you think about managing a backlist that now spans very different moods and genres: horror, dark fantasy, comedic fantasy? Does having a range help, or does it complicate things for your readers?
Oh, I love it. I love it. And I love writing horror and I love writing fantasy. And these may not be the only two things I ever write. We'll see. Um, but but again, I'm working with such a good publisher. They're so responsive, and they're so responsive to artistic impulses, artistic needs,
Mm.
and they want the best books they can get out of me. And so we have the same goals. For example, I had never heard of anybody writing a prequel after book one of a series. That usually happens after the series is done because they want to keep that baton passing. They want to keep you in people's minds. They don't want a big wait while this niche book that maybe not everybody's going to be into comes out. But by God, I told Lindsay Hall that I didn't know the character of Galva, the second character, enough to do her justice in the sequel. I said, I've, she was a black box in The Black Tongue Thief because she didn't trust the narrator yet and she wasn't sharing her story. But their relationship has got to grow. That's got to be part of their arc. And she's going to share her story. I don't know her story. I don't want to improvise as I did in the first book
Mm.
tidbits of her history from the goblins, because when I went around to write that, because I knew that whatever she said, if I waited until after the series was done, whatever she said in these books was going to have to be gospel when I set out to actually write what happened to her as a young woman. Um, and there was enough in The Black Tongue Thief that it wasn't too hard. It was it was a framework. It was like writing form poetry. I had to hit certain beats. There was one beat I decided to make different, and I decided that Kinch was probably telling his story later in life, and he's not that honest. So, and I decided when Galva was telling her story and to whom. So once I knew that, I decided that these stories could disagree because first person narratives always disagree. Ask a trial lawyer. Um, so
Yeah.
where Kinch and Galva disagree, believe Galva. So I wrote The Daughters War. They let me do that. And it just worked out so well because yes, you've got the first book. But normally the second book comes out and people don't want that second book until they've read the first book. When The Daughter's War came out, you now have another door into the series. You've got two entrances now. You can
Hmm.
start with either one, and they're both going to pull people in and eventually get them to the third and fourth books.
That's so smart. I never even thought about that.
Neither did I.
Yeah.
This
So
is purely creative.
I want to ask then, you write really strong female characters. I have been reading your work for a really, really long time. I have been fortunate enough to be an early reader on several of your novels. The joke paragraph that you've probably heard before about, men writing women is Cassandra woke up to the rays of the sun streaming through the slats on her blinds, cascading over her naked chest. She stretched, her breasts lifting with her arms as she greeted the sun. She rolled out of bed and put on a shirt, her nipples prominently showing through the thin fabric. She breasted boobily to the stairs and titted downward.
That's
None of your women are like that.
Well,
None
I
of
was gonna make them like that in the next book, but I guess I got
So I got to ask then, how do you write such deep and well-rounded woman characters? I would say that a great many women in literature have been written very boobily, and you do not write your women boobily. Was that anything conscious that you worked on? Are you just a better writer than most dudes? How does that work?
A human.
I well, I will say that I do not entirely like the way that I wrote the main female character in my first book,
Mm.
and I would make changes now. But then I discovered a secret. Here's the secret to writing well-rounded female characters. They're people. They're just people. That's it.
Mhm.
And
Fears, desires, and all those things.
yeah, all of it. And you're not gonna focus on their functions they happen to have because they're female any more than you're focusing on a dude's functions.
Hmm.
If you're not gonna write about your dude character taking a big hairy poop, don't talk about female stuff in any kind of detail, just to show that you're aware that it's a woman.
Right.
There's a really funny South Park episode that has George R. Martin on it, and there are lengthy discussions of penises and testicles, which apparently George R. Martin has done a lot of in the Game of Thrones
He's
series.
paid by word.
So, what does a sustainable writing career actually look like from the inside? You've been publishing since 2011. Your first book took 10 years to write. Your subsequent books have not taken 10 years to write. What does this sustainable writing career where you're actually making a living doing it and writing what you love, how does that look in the inside, and how is that different than what you imagined when you started out?
Well, I thought I'd be much younger before I got to this point. And if not for the rise of Amazon, perhaps I would have been.
Mm.
Um, the writers, most writers aren't getting paid in the same way that a writer who sold a few books might have gotten paid back in the day. Um, oh, there's a Cocker Spaniel on my floor. He's time for him to go take a walk. I don't know if you can hear the dog in the background.
Mm-mm.
Um, so what does it look like from the inside? I was able to get off the Renaissance Festival circuit. That had been paying the bills for me for 30 years. And 30 years is a very long time to have discussions on the phone with somebody about how to get the poop out of your trailer or to take a shower in a trailer or to be in a trailer during a tornado warning.
Mm.
Everybody
Um,
loves the suck truck.
yeah, yeah. I was done. I still loved performing. I still do. I miss it. I miss being a performer. Even at Ren fairs, I love Ren fairs, honestly. But I don't love crowds. I never really loved crowds, but I sure like making an organic connection with a reasonably sized audience. That is a very old human experience. That is the campfire.
Mm.
That's where storytelling started.
What do you wish you had known in 2012 when Between Two Fires came out quietly that you know now?
I'm sure plenty of craft things. Certainly plenty of craft things.
We're always learning that, right? Every
Yeah,
book teaches us.
yeah. If we're paying attention, yes, yes. But honestly, I'm glad I didn't know that it wasn't going to do well at first. I'm delighted because I made just the right book,
Mm.
and I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it.
We have a really nice question from Sherry that I think I know the answer to, but I'm curious what you have to say. She asks, did your Renaissance Festival work help your writing itself?
Yes, yes. Um, it helped me because I picked up hobbies that sometimes people pick up when they do this stuff. I mean, I really enjoyed stage combat. So, and I started off just trying to reinvent the wheel. I didn't know what I was doing. I was in a very unprofessional place doing unprofessional things when I was 18 years old. But when I got a little older, I met somebody from the Society of American Fight Directors who had been hired to choreograph a fight for me to do. I just thought you choreographed your own fights. Um, and I loved the things I learned from him. Tim Giebel was his name. Um, and it lit a fire under me to learn um, about rapier and dagger fighting in the late 1500s, which led into longsword fighting. And I picked up, and I met a guy named Bill Darr who made beautiful, beautiful bows out of orange osage and hickory. And I learned how to do primitive archery, and I began to shoot heavier and heavier bows. So, and I had friends who were jousters. I had friends who, were around horses all the time. And I got to watch horses and see how they behave and see how the relationships between people who work with and love horses, what those look like. So, I learned how to put I learned how to put beeswax on things to waterproof them. I learned or mink oil to waterproof boots. And I learned that you leave your boots well, after you oil your boots, you leave them in the sun so that the warmth will make the leather drink the wax and make them waterproof. So these are there are 100 little things like that that I couldn't really have gotten from a book.
Mm.
Um, I wrote a scene in Between Two Fires where there's a duel and Tomas is fighting another guy, and I wouldn't have been able to intelligently write what it felt like to block a blow coming in from an axe or any of that if I hadn't done some of that in stage fights throughout the years. So it really did help tremendously.
And I want to add to that as well, because you and I both did Renfest performance for a long period of time. And then I also did street performance. When you get to deliver the same show thousands, literally thousands of times, you get to practice your word order and your sentence order and the way you introduce things and the way you build a story over and over and over again in a way that makes you very conscious of how you use language on the page. And whereas when someone is reading our book, we don't know at what stage they put it down. When we're telling a joke and someone walks away in the middle of it to our face, it's really obvious that the writing isn't necessarily working at that moment. And
Yep.
we also evolve to a stage where we start realizing, oh, this is my audience. That person is not my audience. I would like those people to walk away from my show because they're not going to enjoy it. And I want those seats to be filled with people who are my audience. Christopher, you did an adults only show. Where you got pretty naughty and were pretty hardcore, and people either love it or they hate it. Did that help you at all when reviews started coming in? I mean, I mean, and I know you, but I did research for you anyway on this. And there's a fair number of TikToks that are like, oh, Between Two Fires, this was not the book I loved. And did performing live, did that immune you at all to reviews? Do you just not read reviews? Like, how do you handle the criticism?
Oh, I do read reviews, and I'll be honest. Occasionally, there's one that smarts, but I do read those reviews a lot, and reading those reviews is part of the reason that I've been able to evolve my perspective on things like writing female characters. If people are saying the same thing over and over again, you should listen, you know? And I'll tell you, there is a change in Between Two Fires. And remember, this is also an early book for me. I was 41 when I wrote it, which as a 57-year-old, I'm understanding is relatively young. And a lot of female readers were saying they didn't finish the book and they bounced on a particular scene. And there's a scene in that book where the main character is possessed by a devil, effectively, who tries to get him to violate his young female co-protagonist. And I didn't want to write the scene, and I goaded myself into doing it by saying these are the forces of hell, and there's nothing is going to be off the table. They're going to play really dirty, and it's going to be uncomfortable, but do it. And it didn't occur to me then to question whether it was worth possibly bringing up painful things for people who'd really been through painful things for the purposes of a fictional book, for the purposes of a book that is for entertainment. So when this reedition came out, I cut that scene,
Mm.
and it was the right thing to do, and I won't write another one like it.
When you mention it, I think that was the scene that made me the most uncomfortable when I read the manuscript. I
Yeah,
can't remember if you and I talked about it or not. It's been so long. Yeah. And that's
yeah,
so interesting that part of you at the time felt like,
knew it.
oh no, this is not what I want to be writing.
Yep, yep. Nope. It made me very uncomfortable to write it, and I should have listened to myself.
Wow.
That's interesting.
That is fascinating. Christopher, you have been so amazing and so intriguing. I think Jan speaks for all of us in the chat when she says this was a wonderful talk, so much useful information and so many new ideas to chew. I think that we very often talk about platform, we talk about publishing, and we talk about writing as a commercial endeavor. And I really love that we're getting a chance to get back to this idea of writing what we love to write and being committed to writing the best book we can. We've dropped the links into the chat for Christopher's Between Two Fires and also the pre-order for his latest book in the Black Tongue Thief series, The Thrice Bound Fool. Do check those books out. They are absolutely fantastic. And at least one person in the chat has already read your books and loved them. Which is fantastic. I love that. We always finish with our top tips with 3 things that you can do today moving forward in your work. Before we dive into our tips, remember that coming up, we have a wonderful Craft Talks webinar with Bethany Jarmel that is all about writing with your voice. Those of you who are moving backward and forth between poetry and prose or who are highly interested in poetry will especially like it. And Dinty W. Moore and I will be co-teaching the Rebirth Your Writing Midsummer Memoir virtual intensive that is coming up in 2 weeks. Use coupon BRIDGE for $50 off. Charla, what's your top tip?
It's really hard to follow this up. I feel like there are so many gems of wisdom that Christopher was dropping. But I guess I was inspired by this, especially just the idea just don't give up, don't quit too soon, and also believe in your own work and what you're doing in that moment. I also really appreciate the idea of always being in the position and the posture of a student, trying to learn from what you've already done and from your audience. I think that's really humble and also so incredibly wise. So thank you for that, Christopher.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you guys for the conversation. I loved it.
Christopher, what's your top tip?
Always have an editor. If you're going to self-publish, get an editor. And Allison's a good one.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I think my top tip is I love what Chris said about how much of what he learned in his job and in his hobbies and his interests was relevant to his work. And so I would say for all of us, look at what you love to do, because chances are that the seeds of what you're really going to love to write is also in there in what you love to do as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely true.
Beautiful writers, thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of The Writer's Bridge. And as always, we invite you please to unmute yourselves for a joyful goodbye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
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 See
Bye,
you
guys.
later.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you next time.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.